Right, we've got our paints, but we now need something to paint on. And with watercolours, the answer is going to be paper. And it's a special watercolour paper that we use. If you're thinking about using photocopier or computer printer paper, let me just show you what happens. And I've got here a brush which I've nearly spilt all over the floor, and I'm putting some watercolour, very thin watercolour paint on. The paper starts bending and cockling and buckling like nobody's business. Now, believe you me, after a few more seconds and a few more colours, you'll find it almost impossible to get any sort of a sensible watercolour painting done on this type of paper. So do yourself a favour, leave this paper for what it was designed for, and that's going through printers and photocopiers. Okay, so what is so special about watercolour paper? Well, at first glance you might mistake it for white blotting paper because it's about the same thickness and about the same consistency. The big difference in watercolour paper like this is that it has a special glue size that the manufacturers put in to stop the paint spreading all over the place as it would with blotting paper. Now this is called Bockingford paper, and as you can see it's in a large sheet size. This is called an imperial size, and it's approximately 32 inches that way and 22 inches that way. Now that's about 80 centimetres by 55 centimetres in metric. Right, now if you're buying this online, obviously it's a bit big to go through the post, so many suppliers will provide this cut into half size, which is half imperial, or into 4, which is quarter imperial, and they'll very often do that at no extra cost. Now then, if you want something a bit more convenient, and especially if you're working outdoors and you want to rest your paper on your knee, you'll want to get it in a pad. You can get these in all sorts of sizes and weights of paper. This one is the Langton range by De La Roni, and you can see it's spiral bound here, so that you can keep your pictures as a semi-permanent record if you want to, or if you need to, you can carefully tear them out and mount them in a picture frame as normal. This one is exactly the same, except that it's just gummed along one edge, so it'll peel out very easily indeed. Now this is a similar idea to the previous one, except that all 4 edges have got glue around them, which means that the paper is held pretty securely, so when you want to paint on it, it doesn't buckle and cockle like we saw that photocopier paper. When you've finished your painting, there's actually a small gap in the glue just around about here, and I've peeled it up to start with, but the idea is that you carefully put a knife in the gap and then slide it around all 4 edges of the paper and lift your picture off, and you've got a nice clean surface underneath. Very nice idea that. Now if you don't want to use watercolour paper, then you can use cartridge paper as well. This is a hard backed spiral bound cartridge pad, but that's on 150 gram weight of paper, which is about twice the thickness of the photocopier paper, and that's just about as light a weight as cartridge paper I would use if you're going to get away with liquid washes like that. Now all of these pads that I've shown you, plus this paper here, are all called Bockingford paper, and that's a type of paper, it's not a brand name. In fact, all the manufacturers provide in one way or another a Bockingford type of paper. It's an excellent general purpose watercolour paper, and many professional artists use it all the time. But you can get better quality papers as well. Here's one example called Saunders Waterford, and this is in a little pochette or envelope with about 5 or 6 sheets in, so you can try out the different qualities and surfaces to see if you prefer it. And there's many other high quality and very often handmade papers available to the watercolourist. In fact, even nowadays, a lot of watercolour paper is still produced using largely handmade processes. But for the beginner, I cannot recommend Bockingford paper highly enough. Whether it's in a pad form like this or a sheet form like this, you can always move on to the higher quality papers when you've learned to exploit the basic properties of watercolour paper. And talking about properties, you can get watercolour paper in 3 different surfaces. There's hot pressed, which is a very smooth surface and the paint just slides on. There's not surface, or short for not hot pressed, or sometimes called cold pressed, which has a medium sort of texture on it. And finally there's rough, which, as the name implies, has the roughest sort of texture and is great for giving lovely sparkly loose effects in your watercolour painting. We'll have a look at those now in close-up so you can see exactly what I mean. Right, we look first at the hot press paper. You can see the paint has gone very smoothly. There's no texture whatsoever showing at all. The next one we come to is the cold pressed, or the not paper, and as you can see we're starting to find that the paint is breaking up a little bit, particularly the heavier, thicker, drier paint, where it's bouncing across the peaks and troughs and hollows in the paper surface. And then finally we get to the rough paper, and as you can see now you've got a much more defined texture, and this is great for loose work.